from the beginning of Skyrider Limited, this was always about storytelling, whether it was the flying videos or chatting with other kite flyers. It was always about capturing stories and sharing them with the community. Skyrider Limited was also always about building community. Kites captured my imagination from a very young age. And so the natural evolution for Skyrider Limited and for this is to take to telling stories in the most meaningful manner we can and to share and amplify those stories from around the community. And so here we are. I'm Jesse. This is Skyrider Limited. Welcome to the Pilot's Meeting. So the Pilot's Meeting episode 1, and I'm joined by John Lutter of the Kiteman Group.
Hey everybody, great to be here.
So, and first of all, John, thank you for hopping in and doing this, because obviously first episode and very vague outline of what we were going to do when I called you a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey, you want to be on a podcast?
Absolutely.
But
Well, I can talk about kites and anything else you want to talk about, so I can do that forever. So
right. But you know, the whole point of the Pilots Meeting is stories, and you've been with the Kiteman Group for what?
well, I joined in 2004.
So over 20 years now. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's great, but yeah, it's been a while. It's been an adventure.
So I guess, how did you get into kiting, and how did that bring you to the Kiteman Group? We'll start there.
It's a weird story. It all started in college. So I was in a speech and debate class, and I had to do a speech on uh, a demonstration speech, and it was to teach the students something, and it was just an exercise in doing that, and I just couldn't come up with a subject. I was like, I don't know what do I do? So I'm walking around back in the early 90s. I was walking around the mall and came upon a sporting goods shop, and there was a kite there, and I said, I bet I can do a demonstration speech on putting together a kite and flying a kite. And when the time came, I was like, well, I can't get everybody outside. You know, I I ended up blowing it off, and I did something on plumbing, but I had this kite sitting in the closet for a while, and I eventually took it out and started flying it, and it was just I can't even remember. I think it was a Spectre Star, little, 4 foot, 5 foot kite. And, I learned to control it and fly it. And I eventually met up with a guy here in Orlando, a guy named Randall Lum, who ran a kite store here in Orlando called Crazy Kites. And he would have this, weekly fly, as most kite shops do, and invited me out, and I would fly that little Spectre Star, uh, zipping across the thing, and everybody else has got these kind of fancier kites, but while I was trying to learn, I didn't want to spend a bunch of money, but eventually I
Sure.
ended up getting a Crystal Kites, um, C3, which is still the kite of my preference. I flew it just the other weekend in Treasure Island because, 20, 30 years later, I flew that kite again and love it still. To this day, that's one of my favorite kites to fly.
It's amazing how, like, some of those early kites may not be the most capable thing, but they just scratch an itch in your brain.
Right. Well, I mean, that kite, it's pretty capable. Like, it was meant to be a team kite because it's got the winglets and everything
Right.
else on it. But the way, if you know how to do an axle, it does all the side slides and the axles that I can do, and it's fairly capable in that respect. So I'm still, it's at my skill level. So I guess I don't I can't complain about it.
That's awesome. So you got a little more serious, got a serious kite. I know you were around for some of the competition scene that I was around for.
Yeah, so I eventually moved into like 1997. I moved up to I don't know if you hear that. I just got a ding. Um I moved up to DC to work on the internet. Uh
Mm.
and work for a defense contractor up there, and then one of the bigger web development firms. But while I was up there, I hooked up with Jim Koska and the guys from Wings Over Washington, and of course flew over by the Washington Monument grounds, and um, really enjoyed that. And then my brother and I just got this itch at one time in 2002 to start a website, a kiting website, and it ended up being kind of a blog before blogs were blogs. And we would travel up and down the East Coast and go to all the kite competitions and festivals and document it with photos and things like that, and post that. So it got kind of got me out. We would go camping at Wildwood. We'd go, we'd
Mm.
do all that stuff, and it was awesome. But yeah, it was the competitions and any kite festival we could drive to on the Eastern Seaboard, basically. And that ended up turning into Kite Stop the show, the kite store, because
Right,
more
because
people
you had a store for a while down there.
you know what, had a store for probably about 20 years. I started online, um, and it just happened. I was like, well, the KTAI kite trade show was in Clearwater, Florida. I was like, man, I should go over there. Spend a couple hours to drive over there, and attended that. Really, just thinking I'm going to cover it for my blog. And eventually, I was like, well, I suppose I could turn on e-commerce and try to sell some of these kites, and that's what I did. So for a good long time, I was an online retailer.
Right on. And so then eventually you ended up getting tied in with the Kiteman Group.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I try to tell the story as much as I can because um it really was Bruce Flora from Kiteman Productions was looking for kite pilots to join the new show that they had going on at SeaWorld. And they reached out to the AKA, the American Kite Flyers Association, and it eventually cycled through my regional director, who was Jim Martin, who sent out an email to the region, said anybody that can fly fly kites in Florida summer, um, call up Bruce. And that was, yeah, I literally called Bruce up. He said, hey, we're rehearsing tomorrow. So if you want to try and come out and try to learn how to fly a kite, I off the off the back of a sea, which is the whole trick.
This is the
The whole
key
difference.
detail there, right?
Uh, Literally, I the next day put on some swim trunks and drove out to a lake uh, just west of Orlando, and there they were with I guess they were doing training, so they were doing like because the show was called Fusion, and it was a kind of like a variety ski and kite and dancer show. Had dancing, had almost every show element you can think of in one big production, and it was an amazing show, very very energetic. And they were teaching skiers and stuff how to roll up line, how to set up kites to be in their launchers, and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty intensive for them, but as a kite pilot, you kind of do that already. Like most of the
Right.
time, you know how to roll a kite line on winders, and the aerodynamics of kites. But what they did is they ended up putting me on the back of a Sea-Doo with a Prism Prophecy, pretty big like Prism kite at the time.
The reason
Um,
prism bags were 75 inches, not 72.
exactly. So if I the in my current business partner Brian Keating was the first driver that I had. So he was like, "Hey, let's just take off and go around." And immediately he'll say immediately he knew I knew what I was doing because really it's not much different than flying a regular stunt kite, but there's some dynamics to it. Because not only are you flying backwards, you're sitting backwards on a sea-doo, so you can't see what's happening behind you. So you kind of have to trust your driver to
Right.
you have to trust them, and they communicate, when they're going to turn and all that stuff because that's very important when you're flying backwards. And if you're familiar with flying stunt kites, there's a wind window, and you're generating wind. So you have in front of you you have your wind window, but as you turn in a sea-doo, your wind window uh
So you kind of have to keep
moves.
the kite moving across, right?
So you have to know, like, especially if you're in a turn, that you have to fly off to the right because your wind window is going to shift to that direction.
Right.
So or right, you left, or whatever, however you're turning, but
Whichever direction you're turning.
you have to shift your kite and put it in the wind window. Otherwise, you're what we call stuck on the inside, and you get stuck, and then there's no you lose all wind and all control, and you end up in the water. Your kite in the
Mm.
water.
And I guess in
So
those early days when you guys were using off the rack kites, that was a fairly big problem.
well, not necessarily because the kites we trained on were off the shelf. The kites that we did performed with were all custom made. So
But I
they're
guess we'll get to that a little bit further
yeah,
into the story.
that's a much bigger thing. But really, I jumped from flying a prism prophecy once or twice on the water, and then they said, "Okay, now you're ready to go to the big time." And so that's okay.
Right in the deep end, huh?
Right in the deep end. Well, that's when you're talking about shows and kite productions and stuff, they pay. We're getting paid to do this,
Right.
and you don't have a week or 2 weeks to just kind of fiddle around and figure things out. You have to
Right. It just got to
learn
go.
quick. And
Yeah.
luckily,
Live
like I
live
said,
productions and
yeah, and they were ready to go. Like this was their last day of training before they went on site.
oh,
So it was intense, but uh, I kind of picked it up pretty easily, and a lot of what I had to learn was the communication part.
sure.
Common terminology. When you're on a Sea-Doo and you have to have somebody else be your eyes moving backwards, they communicate in certain ways. Um, it's just, I guess it would be just like any other um military or anything like that. There's common knowledge, and you have to common terminology that you have to learn, and it's important. It's a safety issue
Sure.
if you don't. So anyway, we trained for a couple of days, and that one day I trained with everybody else, and then the next day I went out by myself with one of the designers of the kites that we were flying, and he was kind of he wanted to test me
Hmm.
on like whether I was up to snuff, I guess. And he did some maneuvers that I ended up crashing the kite when a 17-foot delta into the
Ooh,
water
that's a
and ripped
good
the
size sea
sail.
anchor.
And well, so they know enough to put floats on the kite. So if you do land in the water, there's a good chance you can recover it undamaged because they're these kites aren't necessarily the kites that you're used to, stunt kites and lightweight anything. These kites are, yeah. We can get into that if you want to hear about what kind of kites that we flew in those days. But
Definitely, we can get into that in a little bit. But
yeah,
so so where did Kiteman Group start then? Because Bruce, I know the name Bruce Flora. I think a lot of people who tune into this will probably have heard the name, but maybe not the origin story.
sure. Well, Bruce started Kite Man, but it went back couple years before that. So in the late '80s, I want to say him and a partner were up in Canada selling Peter Powell stunt kites, retail, and they would travel to these hot air balloon festivals throughout Canada and try to sell Peter Powell stunt kites. And they noticed that on windy days they would put kites up and they would sell kites like crazy. But on those days when there wasn't any wind and they didn't put kites up, they hardly sold any kites at all. And that's the dynamic of festival kite flying,
Sure.
festival selling. But they decided they were like, we have to find a way to get kites up in the air all the time, like whether there's wind or not. And that's where they started flying these Peter Powell kites off the back of a golf cart or for yeah, it was a golf cart back in those days, and they got seen by somebody with the Montreal Expos, and they said, "Hey, can you guys do that same kind of thing pre-show, pre baseball game? You do it in our stadium." And of course, yeah, of course we can do that.
Sure,
And so
why
they
not?
got, yeah, why not? And so they went out and did a performance, and I this is where it kind of gets a little um it's great. It's a great story, but they got a video of it on a VHS tape, and somehow Bruce was able to get the Disney directory, which back in the days was like a Yellow Pages book,
Like, but like an internal,
like an internal
like a
Yellow
company
Pages for
directory.
yeah company directory for Disney. And so he decided just to start sending that videotape to everybody he could think of at Disney, and it hit the right desk at the right time, and somebody said, "Hey, let's see if we can do that at EPCOT." So they invited the team from Canada down to EPCOT. It took, it takes a few years once there's a decision to do a show or do anything at Disney. It takes a couple of years for things to go through the right approval processes and creative and all that. Well, they ended up fulfilling all those and ended up flying kites with Sea-Doos and jet boats in the Epcot Lagoon there
Hmm.
at here in Orlando. So
And
that
that
the
first
com-
show, they brought in just flyers from kind of around, right?
that was
That's the one with like the Dynakites and stuff like that, right?
yeah, there was a bunch of stuff. There was a bunch of different but it was a show. So they had they had some like Hawaii, they were flying some Hawaiians, I believe. The Frontier kites, the Force 10s,
Hmm. Mm.
big kite, like they were trying to get bigger kites because and I think they were doing trilbies. They would do large stacks of trilbies at the time. It was really a variety of different styles, and they would go on jet boats, so they'd have two people on a riding backwards on a jet boat and fly team formation stuff, which was really crazy to see now. You go, that's awesome and crazy to do, but they did that for a long time. I don't remember how many. I think it might have been a year, maybe more. And then Bruce took a job at Disney as their kind of kite department, and eventually everybody would, when they were talking to him, they'd call him Kite Man, and they say, "Hey, the Kite Man's over there," or the kite, go call up the Kite Man. And he eventually, because he had moved down to Orlando for Surprise in the Skies, he kept the name, started his own company, and eventually they talked him into doing, or he talked them into doing, the World Festival of Kites.
Okay.
That was in 1996. So that was the
So
first production.
that's the one
Fir-
where like the megabyte was there and everything, right?
The Megabyte was there. That was one of the. I look back on it because I was in Orlando. I was into kites, but I don't remember that part of it because it was like a 10-day kite festival at
Yeah,
Epcot.
I remember seeing video of it. But I knew people that were involved, but
Sure. Well, I didn't know how many people that are were involved that were top of the class
Hmm.
in kite flying. So people like Dave Britton flew sidewalk kites on a unicycle, and
Hmm.
people like young people like Alex Mason,
Yep, Alex was
had to
there.
been he had to been I don't know, he was so
96. We would have been 10 because
yeah,
I would have been 9,
he had a
and
special like
he's a year older than me.
yeah, he had to do a special, like they had to do a special like
Yeah, that'd be some
thing to put
paperwork, I
him on.
imagine.
And then but there was people like Charlie Sodich was there, Ken Conrad.
I know DK Breezen was part of that, the Dynakite factory team.
I I'm sure because Bruce would basically go out and get the best of who he could get, and David Gomberg was there,
Hmm.
and they flew an octopus with the Sea-Doo. That was probably one of the first times somebody has flown a
Brave.
Peter Lynn octopus off of back of a Sea-Doo.
That's brave. That's a lot of nylon. That's a sea anchor
Um,
waiting to happen.
yeah, I mean, they didn't get it off the ground and moving the first time, so we'll
Oh,
leave it at that.
oh,
So there was, I've seen some video, and of course that's not part of the show,
no.
but that the whole concept behind the World Festival of Kites, it was a big festival, kite festival, but it was closed off to EPCOT, so it was just the guests of EPCOT. Each country in EPCOT, which is part of EPCOT, had their own like kite maker assigned to it. So like
Oh,
the
that's
Japanese
cool.
pavilion had Mikio Toki was there. Um,
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So he was actually painting kites on the board on the
Oh no,
big
oh,
boardwalk
that's
on
so cool.
whatever the name
Yeah,
of
yeah, the nation's
promenade. Yeah,
promenade. Yeah.
and so Robert Trepanier was there making his kites. Uh, before this it's the who's who of kiting at the time, and um I got again Peter Lynn came out and they flew the
Yep.
megabyte in the parking lot.
Which at the time was the largest kite in the world.
Was the largest, and it's funny because I just stumbled upon this is only really applicable to a few people, but I just found some faxes, old faxes from Peter Lynn to Bruce that has um, hand drawings from Peter about how to create a launch system to put on the back of a boat to where you could launch kites on the water. It's like a I don't know.
The
It's
He's a
crazy.
clever guy, man. Peter was
It was one of those things where it's like, man, only a few people would recognize the
it's a
value of this,
very deep piece of kite
but
nerd right there.
but man, is it cool?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Just to see some of the conversation back and forth, and Peter's got a way of speaking and writing that is very kind of unique, or maybe it isn't. It is from maybe it's a New Zealand thing, but he's got a definite way of expressing himself that is exciting.
specific.
It's specific. It's very it's very yeah. It's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah. So and
Yep.
so I think Kite Man is probably most associated with the theme park shows. Obviously, lots
Yep.
through the years with Disney.
Yep.
Most
Almost
recently was
every.
Kite Tales.
Yep. Yep. Kite Tales was the last one that we've done as a show, a big show. Well, I mean Cedar Point, we have a team that flies there during the
Sure,
summer.
that the Boardwalk Nights.
What nights at Cedar Point in Ohio. That's more of a four-person kite team on land, a quad team. But the last show where we had the full team with Sea-Doos and large Peterlin kites, that was all.
There's
That was
quite a
that,
lot in that show. The Peterlin
there was.
inflatables. There was some Randy Tom stuff, and Hunter from Focus did some stuff for you too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that was. I mean, again, Bruce picked the best of the best for things, and he didn't.
Was that Bruce's last show?
That was Bruce's last show. He had at that time he kind of was stepping away from day-to-day management, and he had left it to. There was three of us at the time. Brian Keating, my business partner, myself, and another employee that were kind of the management for Kite Tails, and that really ran kind of on its own. He left it kind of to us, and he would just kind of check in every once in a while to keep the management in line. But for the most part, he did dealt with Disney directly with the contracts and stuff like that. But day to day operations was done by a 3-person management team.
Gotcha.
And that's where I kind of got into the management side of Kiteman, and uh, yeah, that was an exciting time. Very hot because it's out in Florida sun. It
That
ran for a
stadium was
year,
something too.
and that stadium itself got really hot because there was no shade structures in it. So that it was just direct sunlight and stone and just it was hot, hot. And yeah, so part of the management was like, how do we make sure that our team is cooled down and can take breaks
Sure.
and is hydrated, and that's a whole other aspect of our shows that we really haven't had to deal with, because the previous show that we were on was Epcot Forever, and that was a night show. So
Night show on the water, open water.
open water at night. It still got hot. It is Florida.
Sure.
It still got hot, but at least there wasn't sun beating down on you the whole time. So
Sure. Though I imagine because that's a whole other thing because that's lights and pyro.
that was Lights and Pyro, and yeah, that was a much different type of show. So a lot of the times we were using framed kites instead of inflatables, which is a whole different aspect. So when we crashed those, or had to, because we had to land those in the water, um, and so we had a crew during the day that would just fix kites, and you make sure the wiring is correct, fix broken leading edges, that kind of thing. And so we had a team that would maintenance during the day and then fly at night.
That's that sounds like a pretty active operation to make
It
these
was,
things happen.
yeah,
But a Disney show, well, I mean, a show of that scale for any of the theme parks, really, but Disney show, right?
sure,
So
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like we don't do anything that, as much as as a company and as managers, you want to be as little maintenance as you can, because it just, you have to pay people to to fix kites, and if you can reduce some of that, you don't
sure,
have
and
to
wear
worry
and
about
tear costs
having
money and
wear and
everything
tear
else.
and everything else. So that is part of it.
So I guess that's a great spot to, if you could maybe talk about the kites a bit, because we know a bunch of kite makers were involved, but it's also a lot of your own stuff. I know you guys have uh, on-site sublimation and laser tables and a whole bunch of just started
Yeah.
doing Icarus and stuff. So a lot of recent developments, but a long time of building kites for the
Oh yeah,
shows.
absolutely. Yeah, our shows were starting way back then. I would say in the 96, 97 era time frame. Um, we were using like Force 10s, the bit like as big kites as we could. And I would be reluctant to. I'm reluctant to name the names of people that worked on those kites, because I'm sure I would, I would miss. But we had people like Dean Jordan that would work on kites. Um, that yeah, there's lots of people that were working on building really big kites. So we had at SeaWorld, the ones that I started flying with were 17-foot delta shaped stunt kites. They were massive. And they were built with tubes, this big, and uh,
Fiberglass
well,
or carbon?
a mixture. It was mostly fiberglass. Um, I can't tell you because well, I don't know for sure because it was we did aircraft aluminum fittings. We did
Ooh,
all
that's
kinds.
some mass. What
The
did these
thing
things
is,
weigh?
uh, I don't know how much those older ones weighed. They were significant. Probably a
I
couple
mean, that's
pounds.
a 17 feet glass frame and an aircraft aluminum. That's a hang glider. Like that
Yeah,
is a hang glider.
you're close to it. And it was 1,000 pound bridle line, and the thing with being able to create your own wind on Sea-Doos is you don't really have to worry about weight as much.
Sure,
So
you're not
really,
beholden to a wind range the same way.
right. So you're really more worried about durability and how kites are going to hold up over time. So aircraft aluminum, and when we did rods, it wasn't like a single tube. It was you know a tube reinforced with ferrules, and all the ferrules were
Sleeving
this long
over and
sleevings and all kinds of stuff. So they're made for durability. Um, because the last thing you want to do is break a kite.
because it's a showpiece and you want it to keep going.
Right. And a lot of times, especially when I first started, was um, because kites were only a piece of the show. If you had a kite go down in show, you ruined, or you delayed other parts of the show. So, you know, at Fusion, you would fly the kites, you go around and you do a set pattern, and then you would land, and then skiers would come out from another side, and that was the show elements would come together.
And
When
I
you
imagine all
track,
of that's sort of linked to music timing. So,
oh, it's absolutely music timing. There's things happening in the stadium itself, like dancers and motorcycles.
yeah,
There
so
was
being late is a problem.
Yeah, you're not late. You can't. It's not like, oh, I missed that landing, I have to go around. You can't. You have to land it, and
Right.
hopefully not break anything, not send it in the crowd. That's what we
Right.
we drill that in. That's all part of our safety procedures, is where you can land, how you land. Um, we make sure that we have those set up way beforehand, because that's the one of the most important parts of the shows is landing and getting out of the way. So
Sure.
and not get anybody hurt. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
So yeah, and we develop all kinds of safety systems and releases that are tied. We're really the only company that does that kind of thing. It's funny, when I was sewing up seat belts. So when we sit up on the back of a Sea-Doo, we put
Seatbelts.
a Velcro seat belt around our legs. That's how the
Okay.
kite pilot are attached to the Sea-Doo. Uh,
Okay.
because you can't hold on. You're holding
Right.
on.
Otherwise, you get yanked off the back by
You
the
get yanked off, or
toe
whatever.
force.
So you put a seatbelt, like a lap belt, around your legs, and that's how you can work yourself around. You can still move, but you're secured. Um, I was making a bunch of those one day, and I was telling my son, "Hey, I got to go make seatbelts," and he goes, "Well, can't you just buy them from somewhere?" And I go, "Well, we're the company that makes them, so we we're the people that you buy them from."
So, no. The answer to that
So,
is no.
um, but it was an interesting conversation with him, because uh, that we're a company that doesn't we can't buy stuff off the shelf for the most part.
Right.
We try whenever possible, but for the most part, we have to make it ourselves. We have to spec out all the things, and of course, Disney and all the theme parks have specific, like, they want to know that this has a 1,000 pound rating, or whatever the ratings are. They want to make sure that you're not just at the bare minimum, but
Sure.
overly, because you don't want
No,
to
because it's their liability at the end of the day. I'm sure they're
their
very
liability, and it's you know you can say that, like, it is liability for sure, but for a lot of us, it's the liability is kind of secondary to the show. You don't want something that break that ruins the show.
Right. Well, and then
And
Disney magic, right? You don't want to be out of
yeah,
the story, out of the
you don't want to have something break or something like that in show because it ruins the experience for the guests.
right.
Um, Granted, liability is a huge part of it, but in my heart, it's the I don't want to ruin the guest experience.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna totally get that. So from the frame stuff, you guys moved into doing inflatables.
Correct. So after it was actually after EPCOT Forever, so we had beefed up our kites. So we had diamond kites that were framed. They were 8 foot,
I'm saying they're
eight
big.
foot 8 foot diamonds. We would do 8 foot diamond stacks, so they were 8 foot tall by five stack uh, kites. So and then those all had lights embedded all around it with a battery pack. There was a Pelican case about this big
Jesus.
that had a RC battery and all the control systems and
What what sort
Pyrex.
of voltage? It's like, I mean, what is this running on?
Um, 12 volts. It's all 12 volt. Well, that's the secret sauce. It's
Fair
five
enough.
part
Fair enough.
part of it's 5 volts, part of it's 12 volts,
And
and
was this stuff just on, or were they able to control this as part of the show from
so yes, they were they were able to control it from a control booth down on the ground, and that was where some of the challenges came from.
because
Was
I can imagine working with like Disney Imagineering to figure out how to plug into their gear and make it all
Sure, and luckily we have a good guy that's been our electronics specialist for a while, and he was able to. Well, so that show was created by not just Disney Imagineering, but then they would like the controls and the LED and lighting animations were developed by a third party, uh,
okay.
and then there was a 3 or 4 different people that would work on that project off of a common spec. So our engineer knew basic sizing for the remote control system and the basic sizing for the pyro control system, but he didn't have one. They didn't give him one because they were
Oh,
still kind of developing it. So they
oh,
he knew the sizes. So he would make these like wooden carvings of the same size that would be put in the box and kind of the same weight so that he could simulate how
okay.
much these were going to weigh at the end. But these boxes, they were Pelican boxes, literally, uh, 6 by 6
Right, they have to
by.
be Pelican boxes because they have to be waterproof.
They have to be waterproof because we're putting them in the water. And yeah, and each diamond kite had to have a box on it with the battery pack and
And
everything.
that's how we end up at 8 foot diamond kites. They got it.
So you got your 8 foot diamond kites. So I think we weighed them at one point, and they were like 44 pounds. Like the whole stack was like 44 pounds
My
with all the
God.
stuff. And so we had 100-foot tails with lighting inside, so they were crazy. Um, and
That's
with LEDs, I don't know if you've ever worked with
that's wild.
LEDs or you're
A
always
little, but I'm sure not everybody has, so
but as with a tail whipping around and get into the water and
yeah.
all that stuff, there's we would go and at the end of the day we worked at this like it was the first show was crazy, and we did it, and then we spent 2 months figuring out how to streamline everything.
Well, and I've
Make
got to
sure that
imagine too, like you're constantly fighting. Like it's fresh water, but it's not distilled water, so you're still fighting
correct,
corrosion the whole time.
correct. And I can't say much about that, but just to say that the Epcot Lagoon has, prior to us being on it, had fireworks lit over it for 20-30
Oh,
years. So all the
oh,
debris that gets shot up
yeah. All the burnt off pyro is
was
definitely not in the water.
so
Definitely not in the water, Disney.
right.
Um,
Um, and they did their best to clean it. But I
I
mean,
mean, I'm sure like they're
like,
pretty good stewards of their land, but
but at
Still,
least you can help some of that stuff. And of
right?
course,
Yeah.
we talk, and guests themselves are not the most biggest
Yeah.
stewards of that lagoon. For example,
Uh-oh.
I don't know if I want to tell this to a full audience, but it was funny because a lot of people would like especially a lot of the Disney adults. Um, when one passes away, they say, "Hey, can you sprinkle my
Oh
ashes in the lagoon?"
no.
And Disney doesn't allow that. They do not
Yeah. No, I
absolutely
know,
allow
like I
that.
know in the parks, and I just kind of assume by extension, but oh,
But they don't allow any of that. But people sneak in and will throw their ashes
Neek
in
and grandma and oh
so we used to
no.
joke that there was dead bodies in the lagoon, and it was
I mean,
literally
technically.
it was, and then
Oh,
there's like Disney has a college program, and for some
yep,
reason when they graduate, one of the traditions is to throw your shoe in the lagoon. And so
of course it is.
there was times like we would be, because we do safety checks. There's always
Sure.
somebody that goes around and checks the lagoon before we do a show, make sure there's nothing in there. There's no animals or birds or anything
Sure.
that are perched on a light or a laser or firework thing. And it was you get a get a call on the radio that there's a bunch of shoes in this portion of the lagoon, and so that just meant stay away from that area because you don't want to pick up something
Snag
on your shoe.
hazard. Right,
And
right.
so that was the kind of challenges. Like that's something you can't. Nobody
That's
paints a
great.
picture of that before
No,
you sign the
no.
contract. It's like,
That's
oh yeah,
that
remember you
is
have to worry about somebody's old shoes in the lagoon.
right. Right. That's wild.
Then,
Um,
we had all kinds of like we had a lot of technical issues with that show too because it was like I said we had three or four different people working on the technical aspect of it, and that include and because they wanted to be able to control it from the ground, that meant that they had to place antennas all the way around the
oh,
lagoon so that our radio controls would work throughout the
sure.
lagoon.
Some kind of signal repeater or something.
Repeaters, and I don't know that that's beyond my scope of knowledge, but
What year did Epcot Forever run? What years was that?
that was it was the year of COVID, so that show
Okay, so
got shut down by COVID.
2020-ish.
2020, 2021.
Okay,
Um,
so I mean, radio gear's pretty good, but it's still
yeah,
like the
but
lagoon
they,
is
I mean,
big.
yeah, the lagoon is huge, and you have to be able to catch everywhere that we would go, and because we would go around the lagoon,
Right,
every portion of that had to be covered by some antenna repeater system.
right.
So there was, prior to our opening, we had to figure that out. And over time, just the technical issues of the nightly shows and having to figure out, okay, this box leaked or this box, did,
Right.
the wiring came loose or something like that. There was a lot of that we had to deal with, and I mean, we did by the time we got, it was almost like as soon as we got good at it, that's when it got shut down, and
Hmm.
uh, and that was COVID. So there's no,
Right.
that wasn't anything that was our fault or Disney's fault or anything like that.
Nope. No, I mean it just was
Worldwide
timing
pandemic.
and it happened. Right. Yeah.
And
Right.
we were supposed to be out for 2 weeks, and they closed
Hmm.
the parks down and everything for 2 weeks, and we just left. Like we left all of our stuff just sitting in our we had a big Quonset hut that we had all of our gear, all of our kites hanging up in the ceilings, and we left.
I'm
And
guessing the CDs were still in the water, like just
CDs
at a
were
dock.
we took we removed the CDs out of the water every night, so they were parked
Okay.
next to the they were parked on land, so we didn't really have to worry about that. But it eventually,
But it's Florida and it's humidity of 110% at
sure,
all times. And
yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, we did our best to kind of. Well, we only expected to be out for 2 weeks, but we're like, okay, let's just make sure that everything is
right.
covered up and ready to be sitting. And that was 2 years, or a year and a half, or
Yeah.
almost 2 years. And by that time, we were already talking about kite tails. So
Oh,
when uh, EPCOT Forever was designed to be an interim show in the first place. They were
okay,
going from Illuminations show, and they were building a much larger show, and they wanted EPCOT to Forever to be kind of a. As soon as we end one show, we could the next night be EPCOT Forever, and then once that new show
sure.
was built, we could end it and get the new show in. Uh,
Okay, sure.
so it was meant to be interim, but you know,
But I don't think
as
anybody
things
expected it to be quite
wasn't that
as
long, and then not only that, but
abrupt.
they were building big barges for the show coming there, and so they had to stop building the barges at that point
Oh,
too.
yeah,
Nobody was allowed on property, or like very minimal people were allowed to be on property. So none of that work got done either. So
right.
when they opened the parks again, um, they decided to do just the fireworks and not the kites because we really weren't able to um, get back in gear that quickly to just be a,
Sure, you got to find everybody, and
I had to find every people were tried to stick around, but once we knew that the parks were going to reopen, as we had people that were from Portland. Scott Weeder was from Portland, was on the team, and there was
hmm
people from all over, and they went back to their
and
homes, and that was
as
that. But
best as you could during COVID and not be
yeah,
able to get on an airplane.
right. I mean, they it was over time, but it wasn't just like immediately.
Right.
Um, but we had already started. Brian and Bruce and had already started working on kite tails, doing conceptual designs and things like that. And they decided that they really didn't like the framed kites. Oh, they did, but that was always a hassle. And because we
Sure.
were trying to do with kite tails was more of a uh, intellectual property value. It was
Yeah. Those
more
brought the creatures, the characters in for the first time.
characters, and so we brought in Blake Pelton from who's kind of Peter Lynn's U.S. rep in Utah, and he was really kind of the one that more of a
Brilliant
kite
foil
guy.
kite guy too.
He's not just that. He is such a brilliant guy as it is. Like
Yes. Sorry.
not
Yes.
just
Brilliant.
foils, just one of those guys that lives the dream. And he works with Peter Lynn. Peter Lynn usually will send Peter Lynn kites, I should say, and Peter
hmm
Lynn, but the kite company will send kites up to him uh, to tinker with. He'll bridle
Right.
things, and he'll be the one that works on Peter Lynn's kites. Um, but we had him help us with this whole system of launching big inflatables, big Peter Lynn inflatables in a tiny lagoon and be able to control them
I
because
don't know if people who didn't get to see the show realize just how big those inflatables were too.
well the
Like,
inflatables are they're massive. I don't think anybody really knows like what the square footage is. I can't tell you what
yeah,
the
but like
Simba
Baloo
kite
was
was,
like
but
a couple stories tall standing up. Like he's a
yeah,
big.
like he was at least 2 3 stories, maybe two to 3 stories
I mean,
tall,
these
but
are like Macy's Day balloon sized inflatables.
correct. But we don't ever say that. That
Sorry.
was one of the rules. One of the rules from Disney was to never mention that these are like the Macy's Day float balloons because that's a different thing than what they are, and they're that size. We'll say that, but these are air inflated, just like your
Yep.
normal
Ram air
Peter Lynn kite.
inflated show kite.
Um, they're just big, and we had to figure out a way to maneuver those around in a lagoon off the back of a sea-doo. So Blake was one of the. I mean, these ideas have been kind of batted around for a while, but um, he kind of came up with the system with using a kite surfing kite to launch and be able to control. It has
Right.
enough power to move these kites in a direction,
Sort of puppeteer them a
and
little.
puppeteer them a little bit and be able to maneuver them. So he kind of came up with that the idea, and it was kind of a kite man. Blake, I mean, Blake spent a lot of time here in Orlando working this all out with us. How to launch a kite from the ground, how to launch a a kite surfing kite off the ground from behind a static inflatable kite and get it up in the air instantly off of you know
Yeah, because the inflatable's blocking the wind for the I guess pilot. Do you call it a
yeah
pilot kite still?
we call it a pilot kite. Yeah, there's the pilot kite. But we had to figure that out. We had to figure out how to do that, and it was a whole new thing. Nobody's ever
Right.
done that before. Um, in anything, like nobody's ever thought to do it, and we did it. We also came up with inflatable diamond kites. So we had our diamond stacks are actually inflatables. The same structure that a kite surfing kite has with the leading edge inflatable. We took that concept and made diamond kites out of it. And so now
I'm
instead of
guessing that
having go ahead.
I'm guessing that cut way down on your breakage.
Correct. Amazingly enough. Like we still had damage. We still could
Sure.
you can still break things. But it was greatly reduced. These things would bounce off the water, which was an interesting thing to
Oh,
discover.
neat.
Because we like when if you land a framed kite in the water, it drives into the water.
Right.
Even if you have floats on it, you're taking a hard thing and you're pounding into the water.
Sure.
Um, with these inflatables, they were so light and so kind of bouncy, like it's like bouncing a ball off of something. And you could we didn't do it on purpose, but there was times when something would happen and it just hits the water and it'll just bounce off. And
Kind of cool, actually.
it it's if you could control that, that would be an awesome show element. But we don't.
There's a butt on that, huh?
There's a but, because you can't do it consistently. You can't really
Sure.
do a bounce consistently and accurately. So you just discourage that from being a thing.
Gotcha.
If it happens and you're in the middle of the show, you do what you have to do to not end the show. You do what you can.
Sure.
But yeah, that whole show, those kites, and it took, because we did shows uh, in Dubai and Kuwait, and we would have to send a container filled with framed kites. Now, a single diamond kite can be folded into a ball about this big.
Wow.
Uh, I took a whole stack with tails, with 100-foot tails, in a suitcase over to Burke Sumer last year.
Hmm.
So I had a whole inflatable stack in my suitcase. Um, so
That's really
that
cool.
we haven't had an opportunity to take it overseas or any travel with our stacks, but we can get them in a few road boxes instead of having a whole container.
Right.
That has
Yeah.
to
It
go.
drastically changes what it takes to move a show.
Just logistics and everything else is great.
Yeah, it's funny because I had this conversation doing the hatchling a couple years ago with, that the hatchling is a 3 truck show
Right.
for a 2 to 3 day, open world thing. And that's because, she was designed and built in 2016 and they built her the way they could for 2016. And now if you're going to do it again, you'd do things differently and she'd pack a lot smaller.
Sure. And then that's always kind of you learn that after you build it.
Right. Yeah.
And
You get build it the first time, right?
yeah, first time you get it to work, and then the second time you try to build it to function with all the stuff you learned the first time.
Right.
And that's how iteration of this kind of stuff works. So
So, I guess kind of last questions. Do you have a favorite show you've done?
I still like my first show was Fusion. I enjoy all of them. Don't get me wrong. They're all got their own challenges. They're all fun. But Fusion was like one of those shows where it was like a day at the lake, out on the lake. Well, for us, it's out on the beach, but for other people that are maybe familiar more with lakes, it's like having a day out at the lake where you're tooling around in a ski boat and you're just having fun. That was the whole kind of feeling behind Fusion was because we had dancers and frisbee dogs and trained parrots that
Frisbee
would fly
dogs.
across the thing and we had beautiful dancers and um Harleys. They drove Harleys out on because Harley was a sponsor of the show, and they drove
Okay,
Harleys on the
that's
thing.
cool.
And it was just, what can we do now? What's the and yeah,
Everything in the kitchen sink.
everything. And it was all like even the previous because I was only part of it for 1 year, but it went on for a couple more years, and
Gotcha.
it just got crazier and crazier. Like they just found the show managers from SeaWorld would go to they'd go to like a surf expo trade show and just the find things to put in the show.
That's
And
great.
it was amazing. It was so much fun. That's my favorite show, but again, all of them have their own things. But I would love to have another fusion show. I think it was the most fun I've had. So
So then anything coming up you can talk about? Or I imagine most of the projects are pretty close to the have to keep them pretty
yeah,
close.
we don't really have any ongoing discussions with any of the theme parks other than Cedar Point. That's the next. We can't really. That's not official that we're going to be called back, but we've been there for 2 years, and we are fairly confident we'll be back for the third year. Um, but until that's a whole
Until the phone rings.
until the contracts are signed, there's always a
Sure.
possibility that that it might get canceled or whatever, and that's not up to us. That's usually um, up to somebody higher up that's dealing with a budget and
Sure.
things like that. So that's really where we're going. But for the last 3 or 4 years now, we've been really working on kind of broadening our uh, our product offering. So it's not just shows, but we do a lot of kite fabrications, and we're starting to do a lot more. Like oddly enough, we're doing a lot more ceiling installs.
That's
So
cool though.
so things that are well, our pitch is basically that we know how to make structures that are light, that are
Sure.
that can hang from a ceiling without major major engineering and things like that. And that's we've had a few jobs like that now that just to do ceiling installs, and it's a fun. It uses all the techniques that we do for kiting, but it's kind of a different thing. So
Sure. And I imagine you get to play with lights and stuff a lot with that too. And
lights, yeah, we do lights. We do again dye sub fabrics. So we are printing our own fabric for a lot of these things. So my uh Brian, my business partner, he's more of an engineering kite. Like he's more like if you can picture working on a kite, he would build the frame and do all the connectors and all the framing to
sure.
build the structure. I'm more the fabric guy, the fabric side and the artistic guy, where I'm the one that's dealing with color and types of fabrics that we can use, and that's a fun part of what I like to do is deal with the fabric side. Um,
Well, I bet the being able to do the dye sublimation with that's a lot of fun because
oh, it's,
like the boardwalk nights kites are a great example of the dye sub stuff.
right. Yeah, we were dye subbing a ripstop. That was one of our main goals when we first uh, got into this was to dye sub, learn to dye sub ripstop now, ripstop polyester. Um, and figure.
Icarus as
Well,
most
yeah,
kite people know it, but obviously there's more poly out there than just
sure.
Icarus.
Well, and we do a lot of like poly silk, which is a kind of a silky material. That's what we make our feather banners out of those.
Okay, sure.
Um, so, but yeah, we run the gamut. I have, I have sources for fabric that I probably have 1,000 samples of fabric that I can use and
Oh
pull from
boy, you're gonna
if I need.
have kite makers beating down your door.
Well, and kite makers, there's the few different types of fabrics, but when you're talking like there's apparel type fabrics and
Oh,
spandex
sure.
fabrics and um uh we've been working a lot with called the SEG or silicone edge graphics, and that's like if you ever go into a retail store and you see these light boxes where
Hmm.
there's a printing and there's no edge to it, like it kind of there's no frame. Those are
Sure.
called basically what they do is you sew an edge with a silicone um, like a silicone bead, and that stuffs into the side so you can have a frameless
Huh. Oh,
sign.
that's cool.
Um, and there's a bunch of different types of fabric that is engineered to be either light blocking or kind of glowy fabric, so you can put an LED behind it and it'll illuminate the sign.
Soft, kind of soft,
Yeah, it'll
diffuse.
diffuse the light
Sure.
and make the sign uh light up. Um, or you can play around with different types of fabrics with block out fabric where it's you can't see any light or um, there's a
That's
lot of
really
fun.
cool.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
fun stuff that can happen with that, and we're just scratching the surface here of the kind of things we do.
Whole new world.
It is, and like I said, the
See,
fabric part
Disney
is
callback.
fun. Yeah. The whole yeah, nice.
Sorry. Sorry. I couldn't resist. Um, John, man, thank you so much for doing this and for hanging out. I know we could probably do this for hours.
I could go for a while, but I know you're gonna hopefully you'll be able to cut some of this and
I mean, I'm
we're right at
sure
about an hour, so I guess we can.
I'm sure people will enjoy hearing all the story and the technical and all the stuff. I mean,
I hope
it's
so.
a very different type of kiting than a lot of people are exposed to, the show and the production stuff.
Right. And it is, and it's a lot. There's a lot to it, and it's hard to express that because I could talk technical, I could talk artistic and lighting and lasers, and
Hmm.
you could go on forever. But it's fun and we're enjoying it, and yeah, hopefully, we used to. I gotta bring it back to Bruce Flora because he's kind of the one that got this whole thing started.
From a hot air
Um,
balloon to
from a
Disney,
hot
hot
air
air balloon
balloon to
festival to
Disney.
Disney.
Um, he's one of those. We like to. You think about who's influenced the kite, like the community, and who's
Hmm.
shown kites to the most people. And I am 99.9% that Bruce Flora has exposed people to the most people to kiting in the world. Because
I I would bet that's a reasonable guess.
because I would say like EPCOT Forever, we would have 30,000 people watch our night
Right.
show, celebrities
Every night.
every night, and over the 30-year lifespan or the 40 almost 40 years of doing this, it's millions of people have seen kites
Right.
because
Now,
of what.
how many people have come to Disney?
Yeah,
Right.
and it's it's one of those that I truly stand on the shoulders of a giant, and it's humbling to be sure, especially when like I said, I found a fax between him and Peter Lynn discussing like rando. Hey, let's build this way of doing something,
Oh, I
and
can
it's just
only imagine the number of those types of conversations Bruce had over the years.
oh, it's incredible. But yeah, if I have to leave off with anything, I have to give him a shout out and all the people that I mean, not only just Bruce, but all the people that have been involved with Kite Man over the years. It's incredible.
Well, hey, John, thank you so much for spending time. Cool. And thank you all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of the pilot meeting. Be sure to leave comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or shoot us a message on any of the social media platforms. Let us know what you thought. And as always, we will see you out there, Skyrider.